back, brothers and sisters in Christ. It's great to be with you. We're here talking about our faith in the context of our American experience and we're learning lessons from history. John, we just were left off talking about the Civil War and Colonel Chamberlain's rallying speech to the Northern troops.
I thought it was very, very moving. Every time I hear that.
It is. It's worth listening to once a week, or at least once a month. But let's go back to why I think this is so important, John. The Civil War obviously threatened our national identity. The Civil War brought us to the brink of almost, we would not be the United States of America today if we would have been split into two countries. Right. I maintain, actually, too, that by now, 100 years later, we would not only be just two countries, we'd probably be 3 or 4 countries. Because the principle that was animating the South was the principle that says we cannot maintain our unity because of our differences over some fundamental principles. Therefore, we will start our new government. We'll start our new shop.
And let's not kid ourselves. It was essentially over slavery. But for that issue, I maintain that war would not have ever started. I mean, people argue that it was states' rights. There was a bunch of other things, but at the middle of it, the heart of it was slavery. Yeah. Face it.
It's a classic example of the difference between the practical and the theoretical. The theory was states' rights. The theory was perhaps sovereignty of the states, but what were they talking about? What right were they talking about in practice?
The right to own other human beings.
The right to own human beings. And so what we need to learn today for our society today is that we are passing through a similar kind of confusion again. In the Civil War, there was confusion about who a human being was. There was a confusion. What is a human being? What is a citizen?
Yeah, who had rights under the law.
Who had rights under the law.
And the enslaved population did not have the rights.
Absolutely.
They were property.
But just fast forward to 2010, John, and what are we facing today? Who are the human beings that don't have protection under the law today?
The unborn child.
It's the unborn child. Yeah. And who there's confusion. Can we call the unborn child a human being? Can we call him a citizen in any way, shape, or form? Under the law? Absolutely not. Why? Because Roe versus Wade, the decision, 1973, had declared it so. And we see that strong sense of judicial power having its great consequences.
Didn't you write a book about this, Father Tom?
John, I'm glad you mentioned it.
I'd like to give you a little plug. What was it called?
Yes, if you'd like to read more about this theme, go to cmj.org. It's the publishing company, CMJ, www.cmj.org. And my book is entitled The Ashes That Still Remain. You can Google that, and it'll show up. It takes this theme and tries to see how many scary parallels there are between what was going on in the Civil War and what is going on in the world today. Take as a starting point a comparison between the Dred Scott decision and the Roe versus Wade decision. It is scary how similar the wording and the arguments are.
To remind people quickly about the Dred Scott decision.
The Dred Scott decision was the Supreme Court decision that made an escaped slave, came into Illinois, actually, and he made it up to Wisconsin, but he was tried down in Missouri at St. Louis. If you go down to the Ark of St. Louis, right on the bank of the Mississippi River, you'll see the courthouse where that decision was brought down. It's a national park now, but it was decided that he was not a citizen, he was not a human being, and therefore he had no rights.
But let's recall also, I mean, that our country was established with slavery being legal.
Absolutely. The founding fathers wanted to avoid that question at all costs. And some predicted this will not be settled lest through war, but for war. Yeah, and they were right, those who predicted that. Now the bloodshed that we see is going on, but it's silent. This is kind of crazy, but when people say, I like to trick people a little bit. I like to ask people, are we living in peace times or are we in war? And, we might say now, we're at war.
Afghanistan.
Because of Afghanistan, the war against radical Islam. But there's another sense, even before 9/11 popped up, I was saying, we're at wartime. We're not in times of peace. We're not living in times of peace. What do you mean? We're not at war. Well, yes, we are. The victims are silent victims. The bloodshed is quiet and hidden, and there is a war going on, except the victims can't speak for themselves. So all this kind of spirit animates me and makes me remember the war, the Civil War, that was bloody. They were able to read the casualty count in the newspapers, or they would be posted on the post office or at the town hall. And after every battle, people would run to the town square to see who died and who won. Different victims of the different battles. And I believe we are now facing a kind of a high watermark, like in the Battle of Gettysburg. Lincoln prophesied, he says, if we win this war, we have a chance. If we lose this war, probably the war will be lost. So I do believe, I think our nation is facing such a crucial time today. Remember that, my friends, when you go to the voting booth in November, remember the right to life. Those who defend the right to life deserve our great support. They're sticking their neck out, which is not to mean those who have had abortions are evil people by any stretch. We all know people who have had abortions. Many people have been involved in that terrible decision, but we can't make a wrong into a right. We can't decide that it doesn't matter, that we can ask for God's blessings upon our land while ignoring one of the fundamental commandments of God. Let's.
Good point. Okay.
Can we key up this sense of unlike other nations? One of our heroes on this radio station, WIND, the sister radio station, Dennis Prager, I'll put a plug in for his great voice in America today. He stumbled upon the same theme, or I stumbled upon it with him, or whoever. He uses this idea of the Old Testament Israel. When they were trying to form their identity, they made a mistake in calling for a king. If you read the Bible carefully, if you read the Old Testament and the story of the Hebrew people, the Jewish people, God was not pleased when the people asked for a king. This is at the end of the time of the judges. There's Genesis, the story of Adam and Eve. Then you go to Abraham. Then you get to the Moses. Then after Moses, he sets up the judges. This was before the kings. And Israel was supposed to be a light to all the nations. They had just received this great wisdom, the 10 Commandments. And they were supposed to be a light in the world.
So what's Prager's point? What's his tie-in here?
He makes a reference. There's a parallel between what the people were doing in calling for a king and what we are doing by looking for a big government, a huge government that will rule over us and will will save us from the great problems that face us today. And I see, too, a similar parallel. Well, let's listen to this wonderful clip from one of my heroes and yours, Dennis Prager.
To expand the state, these are all natural inclinations. Let's be like all the other nations, the ancient Hebrews said, remember? Let's have a king. We say the same thing. Let's be like all other nations. Let's have a king in the form of a big state. There is no difference between a king and a big state, except that one is elected and one isn't, but it almost doesn't matter. when the state has that much control over one's life. That's why I beg you to go to Winning in November at the top of my website.
That's more powerful than you realize. And he is, of course, Jewish.
I don't hear anybody calling for a king in America. I mean, is he saying that big government is kind of the stand-in king?
Exactly. They're not calling for a king. We're not going back to a royal family and all that. We've gone there. But the movement to, when we look at our problems and we look at the chaos and we wonder what can we do, the natural inclination is to say, government, save us. Government, take us out of this mess. And so you need to have more and more government. The bigger the government, the more help we get. And he's trying to say, wait a minute, be cautious of that. Because Israel obviously did get a king. They did get King David and King Solomon. And we need to go into that story a little bit more and see some of the predictions that were made.
I'm sure in future shows we'll revisit this topic.
Exactly. We need to come back. You need to stay tuned. You need to come back next week because these are vital, groundbreaking issues and points that we're uncovering here today. I want to thank you for listening this morning. Come back next week. Thank you for listening to Unlike Other Nations. If you want to see this kind of programming continue, please visit our website for Immaculate Conception, imcc-chicago.org. And you can contact me. My email is ftcoys@aol.com.